Hi guys, so we're going to go over the worksheet. It's the same thing from Wiser Me, hopefully a little bit more in detail. We're writing a reason for each step I get. Here on this equation, I have x plus 7 equals 9. To get this x by itself, you have to tell me what my next step is. Because I'm having to add 7 here, I need to get rid of that 7. I'm going to subtract to both sides. So because I'm subtracting to both sides, this equation is still balanced, it's still equal. So the property that I'm looking for is the subtraction property. Now, to go into, excuse me, to go into further detail about this and the subtraction property is the reason why it's called the subtraction property of equality is because I'm subtracting 7 to both sides. So based on this property, my final answer should be x equals 2. Okay? This is based on the subtraction property. And that's all you're really telling me. You're telling me that step, right? So in number 2, I have k minus 5 equals 18. Well, in order to get rid of this 5, I'm going to add. So I'm going to use the addition property of equality. Okay? I'm doing that because I'm adding 5 to both sides. And because I add 5 to both sides, I'm going to get k equals 23. See? If I add 5 to both sides, I get k equals 23 because this cancels out. Basically, you're just telling me what you're doing in algebra. Given is what you're given. It's what you start off with. That's why it's always your first reason for 99.99% of the time. Okay? Because I'm given this statement, this x value is going to be different than what these x values are, right? So that's the way that we're working in this. So in order to get rid of this 2, because remember, this is 2 times x. 2 times x equals 54. So in order to undo multiplication, I use division. So I need to use my division property of equality, right? Because the reason why it's called division property of equality is because it's equal. I got to do it on both sides, right? So divide by 2, divide by 2. That's how I get it. So based on this division property, I'm going to get x equals 27. Okay? And that's how this works. Last one, I'm missing a letter. I'm going to go ahead and say it's x again, okay, because the variable is gone on my paper. X divided by 8 equals 6, okay? When you have this like a fraction, this is like a division symbol. You got to remember that. If you look at your calculator, right, the division symbol looks like this anyways, right? It's like a fraction, so that's what this is. X divided by 8 equals 6. So in order to get rid of this division of 8, I'm going to use my multiplication property. Why? Because again, I'm multiplying on both sides. I'm going to multiply this side times 8 and this side times 8. Because of my multiplication property, I get the final statement of x equals 48. Okay? So you technically don't have to show this work. You just have to list your properties. How did I get from point A to point B? I got from point A to point B by using my multiplication property. So I'm going to kind of show you what I mean in this next one because there's a couple of steps in here. Okay, the first thing we're doing is this is our given equation, right? 3x plus 5 equals 11. So the next step I'm going to do is I notice I need to get rid of that 5. It's a plus 5, so I'm going to subtract 5 to both sides. So I'm going to use my subtraction property. And based on my subtraction property, I subtract 5 from both sides. So after I subtract 5 from both sides, I get the statement 3x equals 6. Right? Minus 5 here, minus 5 here. The 5's cancel out. 11 minus 5 is 6. Okay? Still not done. I have 3 times x equals 6. So in order to get rid of that 3, I have to divide both sides by 3. Since I'm dividing both sides by 3, I'm using my division property. And that leaves me with x equals 2. Right? You see how I didn't do any of that work, but I made sense of it. Now, for those of you that are still struggling with Algebra 1 or algebra in general, make sure that you show your steps. That'll help you get these next statements. These are your statements. These are your reasonings. Statements, reasonings. Based on these statements, this is my reasoning to get to this final point, this final value. Okay? So again, if we look at number 6, we have negative 3a minus 9 equals negative 24. Well, what's my first thing that I'm doing? Well, I hope that you say given. Given should always be the first. Notice it was the first on all of these other ones because this is my given statement. based on this given statement, I'm going to come to a conclusion. Okay, I need to get rid of this minus 9. So in order to get rid of that minus 9, I'm going to add to both sides. So I'm going to use my addition property of equality because I'm adding this 9 to both sides. When I add 9 here, the 9's cancel out. When I add 9 to negative 24, okay, I get a negative 3a equals a negative 15. Okay, that's because I added 9 to both sides. Again, those of you that struggle with the algebra process, I would still recommend doing this, right? Doing the little work. Okay, that's the little algebraic work. This shows this, right? But this is the statement based on the fact that we did this addition property. So now I have 3a, 3 times a equals negative 3 times a equals negative 15. With that being the case, now I divide both sides by negative 3 so that I get a positive a at the end. Positive a equals a positive 5 because negative 15 divided by negative 3 is a positive 5. Well, how did I do that? I use my division property because I'm going to divide by both sides. This is how you set it up. Again, if you're struggling with the algebra part, make sure you divide both sides by negative 3 so you get your final statement. The red stuff is really not what I'm looking for. That's the algebra stuff. The algebra parts, the blue stuff that I'm looking for in this situation is the geometry part. You're explaining your steps and how you got to your next statement. Okay. Number 7, there's a fraction, but really notice that this fraction is 1/5 y. So really it's kind of like saying 1 times y over 5 or just y over 5. That's really important. So when you see something like this, where it's 1/5 y, imagine it as being y divided by 5. And that'll make your life so much easier. So much easier. Okay? So again, before I can move on, before I can do anything, I'm going to do my given statement. This is the given statement I'm opening with. Now I need to make a conclusion about some stuff. Okay? My conclusion here, I need to get this y by itself, so I do that by subtracting 6 to both sides. So I'm going to use my subtraction property of equality, right? And based on the subtraction property, I'm going to get y over 5 equals negative 8, right? Subtract 6 here, the 6 cancels, subtract 6 here, I get negative 8. Now, I need to get rid of this 5 that's in the denominator, okay? Remember, this is division, y divided by 5. So in order to get rid of that 5, I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. Now, that's the great part. So this is your multiplication property, right? That's the great part. Instead of dividing by fractions, which a lot of us seem to be really hard to do, the opposite is multiplying by the reciprocal. So my final outcome is y equals negative 40. And this is really important. You'll see this is the algebra piece in red that you don't technically have to do. Just make sure that you see your outcome, right? This should be your final statement based on your equations, okay? Number 8, real easy one-stepper. Of course, the very first thing, I'm going to solve for x because this is what I was given in the statement. Okay, this is what I was given. Now, in order to solve for x, I subtract both sides, right? So I'm going to use my subtraction property. Subtraction property. And you can, when you're doing proofs, you really should say subtraction property of equality, just so that they knew exactly which property you're using, okay? And we get x equals, I believe that's what, 91? Yeah, 91. Because the algebra piece is you're subtracting 23, right? So in this red piece, minus 23. Minus 23. Okay, so again, I'm going to go over these ones, hopefully that you can see it. This is 5 plus 10 divided by 5. Oh, you know what? There's no variables here. I think there used to be an x here, so be careful. There should be an x right there. Given a lot of steps. Remember, when there's this whole thing is in the numerator, it's as if this is a set of parentheses. Okay, it's as if that set is a parentheses. So please make sure that you understand that. It's not 5x divided by 5 plus 10 divided by 5. It's the whole thing up top divided by 5. Okay, so again, the first thing I'm doing is that this is my given statement. This is what I was given. I'm going to prove something out the outcome. Okay, so remember when we're working PEMDAS backwards to solve, the parentheses is the last thing we're going to do. So what that means is I need to get rid of this division of 5 first. Okay, how do I undo division? Well, it's the opposite, right? It's my multiplication property of equality, right? And based on that multiplication property of equality, I should get 5x plus 10 equals 200, right? 5 times 5 over here cancels. 40 times 5 is 200. Okay. Then my next step, I just keep on solving for x. I'm going to get rid of this 10 by subtracting. Right? When I use my subtraction property of equality, I get 5x equals 190. And then lastly, I divide both sides, so I'm going to use my division property, and I get x equals 38. Right? And this is what geometry is. You got a statement. Okay, so here's my statement given. Based on this property, this is the statement I get. Based on this property, this is the statement I get. Based on this property, this is my conclusion. So based on these steps going in this order, this is my final outcome. Okay, and lastly, you notice that there's variables on both sides, so that's something we got to take care of first. Again, this is what I was given. Okay, based on my given statement, I need to make some moves, get my variables over to the left. I always like my variables on the left-hand side, so I'm going to subtract 7x, right? Getting variables on one side is what you need to do, and preferably on the left side. So if I subtract 7x, I get the statement negative 4x minus 12 equals 8. Right? Minus 7x here, minus 7x here. 3x minus 7x is negative 4x. Now my x's are on one side. I can take away this minus 12. By taking away this negative 12, I do the opposite, right? So I'm going to use my addition property of equality. Right? Based on this addition property of equality, I get negative 4x equals 20. Okay, and lastly, I need to get rid of that negative 4. It's negative 4 times x equals 20. So in order to get rid of that negative 4, I need to divide. So I'm going to use my division property of equality, because I'm dividing both sides. When I divide both sides by negative 4, I get a final statement of x equals negative 5. And this is how you do algebraic proofs, guys.